Hi, it's craftytinas. Today I want to show you how to make a notebook using the We Are Memory Keepers cinch. I want to make a notebook lining up a cover that is larger than the pages inside. So I want to make a notebook where it has a cover that is slightly larger than the pages. I get this question a lot. So I wanted to clear it up, explain how I make mine, and explain how I line it up to make sure the holes are properly placed. There are probably multiple ways of doing this. I'm going to show you my way. Doesn't mean that it's right, and it doesn't mean it's the only method, but I'm hoping that it helps someone line it up that has had trouble. This is a 1/4 inch, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 quarter page notebook that I am making. I am using watercolor paper that I got at Michael's. There's 40 sheets in here, and I got it really cheap because it was on sale. I'm using 6 sheets, and I'm taking those 6 sheets and cutting it down to get me 4 pages. So I have 24 pages. I have 8 pages, and then I added a piece of cardstock. And then I have 8 pages, I added another piece of cardstock, and then 8 pages. And the reason I did that is because I want my notebook to have tabs. 2 tabs to be exact, 2 divider pages. So I'm going to show you how I made this notebook. We're going to do it live on camera, mistakes and all, so you can see how I line up my tablet to get my holes properly placed for the pages to go in the exact center. Please note that on the right hand side, you are not adding any extra space for the cover versus the pages. The left hand side, which is where the binding goes, needs to be flush, so don't add any extra space. I added a 1/4 inch to my cover, top and bottom, and a 1/2 inch to the right hand side so that it will accommodate my tabs to go on my divider page. Now I'm going to show you how I line up my tablets. First thing I always do is I take a scrap piece of paper, and if I'm making multiples of this size, I never have to make this again. This is just always my guide. And I always use it, even though I think I know what I needed to do, I use this as my guide because I don't want to punch this pretty cover because I'm really happy with the paper choice. I don't want to punch that wrong and have to start all over. It takes longer to make the covers than it does to actually make the notebooks. I do have a video on making these covers, and I plan on making more videos. So I have a sample page of my inserts. This is the watercolor paper and my cardstock divider. And then I have a sample page of the front and back cover. On your machine, I don't know if you've noticed or not, there is, right here it says center. This is the center of all 12 holes. It is between the 6 and the 7, straight down the middle. And that's the center mark, and that's important if you're making odd-sized tablets and you want the cover to be larger than the pages. To me, trying to figure out where that little arrow goes straight down was really hard. So to make it easier, it is simply the 9 1/4 mark. It's this line right here. So that line is my center. This is my inside paper. It is 5 1/2. If I want the center of 5 1/2, it is simply 2 3/4. I could have just folded this paper in half and let the crease be the center, but I wanted to mark it to show you guys. This mark needs to line up with the 9 1/4 mark because that is the center of the page, and this is the center of the machine. But if you notice, my lovely guide over here doesn't go far enough to butt up against the paper. There is no way I'm going to be able to put this piece of paper down, slide it in, and it still be perfectly aligned when I can't see that line once it goes inside. So I'm going to need something between my paper and the guide to help me punch all of my pages exactly the same. Now, there are a number of ways of doing this. On Etsy, you can buy these. They're called Cinch paper guides. People 3D print these, and they come as a whole set. There are multiple types out there, multiple kinds. My husband's hobby is 3D printing. So he just picked one and printed this out for me. I haven't really used it the way it's intended. It's only intended for an A5 and an A6 size. I don't know what I'm making at any given moment. I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but I have found a nifty little use for these. So the way this works is, this is my paper, and this is the guide. I want to be able to put my paper up against something flush. As you can see, this is kind of L-shaped, which means it's thick here, so I could put a whole stack of papers, and they're not going to go anywhere. So if I put this against my guide, that's against the machine's guide, I can move this until I get my line to be exactly 9 1/4, which is my center mark. So now, with confidence, I could slide my paper up that way, and know that not only is it squared where it's supposed to be, it is also exactly center where it needs to be. That's important because I want my holes to line up in the center of my piece of paper, regardless of what size I am making. Now, this is only for those people who want to go on Etsy and buy the set already made and they'll ship it to you. Or if you have someone who 3D prints, you can download this, give them a file, and have them 3D print it for you. But what if you don't have this and you want to make a notebook right now? So there are alternatives. I just need something, anything, that can go against this guide that is thick and will hold my paper. It doesn't have to be an exact size of anything. So I have this USB in a wooden block. It's pretty thick. Again, hubby made me this to hold my designs, but it is square and it is thick. Because my paper can go up against it, there's nothing wrong with using it. I simply put it against my guide, put my paper, and find my 9 1/4. It's lined up, and with confidence, I can push my paper and know the holes will be center. So it doesn't matter what item you use as long as it is big enough this way and thick enough to hold multiple papers. I also have this little guide. This helps me make my covers. You'll see this in other videos. Again, this was 3D printed. It's a file off of Etsy, but this is also sold on Amazon. We Are Memory Keepers actually sells a version of this. I ordered one and it got lost in shipping, so I canceled the order and my husband 3D printed me one. This can also be used because it is thick. I can line it up against mine. And you don't want anything that's going to go in here where your holes are being punched. Again, simply move my guide to be 9 1/4 where my mark is. And that's how I can punch my pages. Because this is odd shaped because it doesn't belong here, you may want to put a piece of tape to hold it. You do not want to put a piece of tape here because you want your pages to be as flush as possible against your edge. That is for my paper. What about my cover? The same theory applies. You simply need to find the center, and because this is 6 inches, my center is 3 inches, so I made a mark in the center. If you line these two marks up, you can see there's a 1/4 inch on each side. Remember, this way does not matter at this point. We are only worried about where we're putting the spine. It is the same principle. I simply put this against my guide and find my center, which is the 9 1/4. And I can, with confidence, even though it's hidden, push my paper both ways. By doing this, I know this already has holes in it, but I want to use it as an example. So here is my 9 1/4. I simply push my paper up. Before I do that, I want to show you. Notice how this punch is almost in the center of the end of the page, and so is this punch. You want the end of your paper to be past the hole, but not so much so that it gets a partial hole. So in this case, when I'm looking at my paper and I'm looking at my pegs, I don't want this one to punch and I don't want this one to punch. I simply want the center ones to punch so that there is not a partial hole at the end of my paper. I simply put this in the machine, punch it, and now the amount of space on this side is the same amount of space on this side. And that is what you're aiming for. And you can fold this over and check it out. Same amount of space. By centering this up, like if I was to leave this right here, right now, you can see that my holes do not match up. My center does not match up. So if I simply punched my cover the same as my pages, that is where most people fail. Your cover has to be punched different. I want to line it up again with my 9 1/4 so that this is centered here. Now by pushing this up here, you can see that I have room for another hole on each end. Do not push these back in. You need the same amount of holes on your cover as you have on your pages so that they line up perfectly. By leaving these out and not pushing them in, my cover is going to match my pages. You simply push it in, make sure it's snug against the left and snug against the top. Punch the holes, take it back out. Now you can see the same amount of space on both sides. Fold it over, same amount of space. My pages are going to align inside my cover with 1/4 inch on both sides. I should have used color paper for you guys so you could see the difference. But let's do it with the real notebook so you can see how this is going to work. Here are my pages. You could do this one of two ways. You could do it all of them right side up or all of them upside down. However, you need to be consistent. I always prefer this to be the top of my page, so I have this habit of flipping them over. Because that's my habit, that's the way I'm going to continue doing. You do not have to. You could simply punch them this way. But I like to keep them in the same order and keep the same tops because sometimes this is a spreadsheet or a form or lined paper. And I want to make sure that I'm always keeping the top consistent with what I consider the top. Again, this is another personal preference. There could be a number of ways. This is just the way I want to do it. So I'm going to take the first little bit, and these are thick because they are watercolor paper. Super important to make sure my pages are lined up. Face down, this is the top. Now, I just did the cover last. So it is going to be super important before I even start that I line this up. And if you see here, I would have punched the holes in the wrong place. This is the page, not the cover sheet. So I need to make sure my guide is in place. All the way to the left, all the way to the top. My mark for the center is at 9 1/4. So this is where my guide needs to be set for the pages only. If it helps you not to make a mistake, take your template for the cover and lay it on top of your cover. So when you pick this up to punch it, you're going to see that you need to use your guide to line it up. These are just little helpful hints. I get distracted and make a lot of mistakes. The good thing is I'm playing with paper. It's relatively inexpensive, but it upsets me to punch something when I've really picked out a great paper. Now I'm ready to punch my pages. Again, it's out of habit. It is not necessary. I do face down, top. All the way to the back and all the way to the left is important. And punch. Because I did these face down, I'm going to leave them face down and set them to the side. Again, face down, all the way to the top and all the way to the left. Leaving them face down. By doing this, I assure that the holes are in the right place for the right item. Face down, all the way to the top, all the way to the left. If it helps, say those words out loud when you're punching. Nobody's gonna mind. Leaving it face down. Face down, top to the left, I make sure that it's snug to the top and to the left. There we go. And the last one. Again, same guide, all the way to the top, all the way to the left. And leaving it face down. By leaving them face down, I know for sure that I lined every single page up exactly like this. So my holes are exactly correct. Because even if you're off a smidge, it doesn't matter, but this will keep you lined up and perfectly straight. This is my front. I'm going to now lay it over to the side. It's not as important when the pages are blank, but I want to be in the consistent habit so that when they're not blank, I'm not punching them incorrectly or inconsistently. Picking up my cover to punch it, I have my template, so I know this is not lined up properly. I line it up to my 9 1/4, my center. And now I know this guide with my extra is lined up properly for my cover. I also know that I do not want to push these 2 pegs in. I only want it to have 10 holes, the exact same as my paper. Now here's why the right side upside down is going to come into play. This is my notebook. This is the cover. This is the back. I want to put it in my hand exactly like I would put it if this notebook was complete. This is the cover. This is the back. Sometimes your paper is going to have one-way print. Another reason I got into the habit of doing upside down. I want to lay this on the table, and again, this is only the way I do it. It helps me be consistent, regardless of the printout and regardless of the pages. This is my cover. Just like my notebook, I want to do face down, top to the left. If you'll notice, my cover goes past these 2 pegs. It is very tempting to push these in. Please leave them out. You need 10 holes for your wire so that it matches your pages. Now with confidence, I can punch holes. This is my cover, so I'm laying it on top. This is my back. This is the top of the back. Even though this looks the same as this is not the top. My notebook, when fully made, is going to sit just like this. This is the top of the back cover, even though it's the inside cover. Again, I do face down with the top to the left. This helps me assure that if this back was a one-way print, I am doing it correctly. And now you see the same amount of space on each side. If I were to line up my notebook with the holes and nothing else, you would see I have a 1/4 inch on top, 1/2 inch on the right, and a 1/4 inch on the bottom. This is exactly the way I wanted it to be. It was simple once I worked out where my spacer needed to be. If you're making a notebook bigger than the 1/4 page, say if you're making a 1/2 page notebook, it is much easier to get a guide because this will move for you. The only reason we couldn't use this is because we were making a smaller notebook. I will be making another video so that you're not using spacers. I'm going to make another video using a 1/2 page so I can show you how to use this guide on making your notebook. So now that we've done this, let's bind this together. Turn this to the side so you can see. I have 10 holes. Your wires come in a full page sheet. They're 11 inches, which is great when you're making small notebooks because you can use partial pieces. You can use partial pieces for little notebooks, all kinds of cute little things. But I need 10 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is 11. So I just simply want to cut this one off. If this was 3 or more, I would keep it. I don't keep anything lower than 3. I have not found a need for it yet. I might in the future. So now I have 10 double loop wires. Another question I get is how do I know what size wires I need to buy? You need a range of wires. You need enough wires that you can make multiple sizes without having to order every time you make a different size notebook. In another one of my videos, I made this guide to show me what wires I need once I know how thick my tablet is. This notebook just simply lays to the side. As you can see, my small wires, it's not going to hold it. My next size would hold it, but it's not going to leave a lot of extra room, and I want to be able to really open this notebook flat. I want to fold it backwards. I want it to be a little bit bigger. If I go to my next size, it not only goes past my notebook, it gives me a little extra space there, and I like that. So I'm going to go with a 3/4 inch wire. This is a double loop 3/4 inch wire. Your wire for your cinch has to be a 2-to-1 pitch. That simply means that for 2 holes in 1 inch space, that's a 2-to-1. You can get multiple sizes, such as this, but you can only get the 2-to-1 pitch. That's really important if you're new to the cinch and you're new to ordering your wires, or your machine's coming in and you want to get a start. As long as you buy 2-to-1 pitch and you make sure your range size is from 3/8 up to 1 1/4. So I don't have the smallest and I don't have the largest. I just bought these based on what I wanted to try out. So now that I have my holes, I have my wire cut to size. One side of your wire, it has little flat surfaces. You hang it on the side. I need to assemble this book. I want to remove the back cover and lay it to the side. I don't want to flip it over. I don't want to do anything but lay it to the side the same way I took it off. I'm going to add my wires, add my cover, then I'm going to add the back the same way I took it off. And the reason you do this is because you want the seam to be inside your notebook, not on the outside. And that is my book. Simply flip the machine around, and you're going to put this in the machine. There's a little space here. Again, my husband 3D printed me this wire guide, which you can also find on Etsy, the file and the actual finished product. I like it because it helps hold my rings in place. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. There's a piece of rubber here that helps. But I really like it. And I did see on the new cinch they're coming out with, they're actually going to include this guide. So now I want to bind this. The most important thing is make sure your size here is the size wire you have. I have 3/4 inch wire. It's on 3/4 inch. You push down this and move it. And it goes in little steps. And this right here looks like it's the exact 3/8. But I have noticed that if I go one click larger, it doesn't leave a flat edge on my wires. Not sure that that's why it leaves a flat edge, but I did notice that I like it barely above, slightly bigger than the actual size wire. You simply put this in, and I'm going to try to show you. You need your wires to touch the back of your machine. Both open ends have to touch. And see, with my guide, it doesn't slip back and forth. It sits really good in there. But I'm going to push toward my machine so that the wires touch the back. I don't think I can do this on its side, so I'm going to have to set it down. But does everybody see it's up against the back, all the way down, and that is how you punch it. Push toward the machine and to the bottom. And cinch. My wires are now round. I don't know if you can see that. There's no flat edge. both curved pieces came together. And again, the reason you wanted this to go here is so that that seam is now in the back of your book and not showing. And there is my notebook. As you can see, the notebook has the same amount on top as the bottom. You see it's very loose. I could have went down a size, or I could have added more pages. I'm going to leave this because I think I want to put some pockets on the inside of this, and that's going to take up some of my space. I also believe I want to put pockets on my dividers. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put tabs on my divider pages. And that's why I wanted a 1/2 inch here. But that's it for this video. I will make another video showing adding tabs to this exact notebook and adding the pockets to this exact notebook, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe so that you're notified when I add another video. If you haven't seen my other videos, check out my channel. I show you how to make covers and different notebooks. Be creative, go make something fun. Until next time, happy crafting.